My name is Kathleen Ashby Atkins. I like pictures and books. I like to make photographs and books. I used to use film cameras and a darkroom and chemicals for silver gelatin prints. Now, I mainly use digital cameras and I edit and print using a computer. But images are still the most important thing about photography, or almost the most important thing. Maybe where you go to find the images is more important. I like it all: place, process, and pictures. The Japanese Garden in Seattle is a place in both physical space and in a tradition. When you go there, you can experience its boundaries, its gatehouse, and its bamboo fences, and the nature that architecture transforms from dirt and irises, say. Oh, let me show you the irises. Into a recognizable art. Because everything in the garden is arranged beautifully, I want to keep it in my mind and take it with me when I leave, which is what I do with photography. Of course, like every other visitor, I bring my other experiences with me, which is probably why, when I look at the Japanese garden's water lilies, they look very much like the water lilies in Monet's garden, too. In any garden, season makes a mark, and that shows up also from beginning to end.
Hello, my name is Michelle Kumata and I'm a local artist. I'll be sharing some works from my series Northwest Nikkei, which celebrates the Seattle Japanese Garden and our local Japanese American community of 1960, when the garden officially opened to the public. I'm influenced by heritage, identity, and legacy, and my work focuses on stories of Nikkei, people of Japanese descent living outside of Japan. Juki Ida was the master gardener from Japan who oversaw the garden's creation, working with a local team of Nikkei contractors. Ida created more than 1,000 gardens and was honored by the Emperor of Japan for his work. The only large garden that remains is the Seattle Japanese Garden. Ida painted the scroll while the garden was being constructed. Before returning to Japan, he gave the scroll to his contractor and mentee, Richard Yamasaki. Yamasaki kept the scroll for many years, eventually donating it to the Miller Library. Upon his retirement in 1989, Richard Yamasaki gifted a prize black pine tree to the Seattle Japanese Garden. The now century-old tree had been cared for by his father, Yamasaki, and his brothers, and it survived during the family's incarceration during World War II. Yamasaki carries the black pine and rises beyond the trials of his family's history. The pine represents endurance, adaptability, and a bright future. The monarch butterfly represents rebirth and transformation. In 1960, Nancy Sawa Tanaka was crowned JACL Nisei Queen at the Seattle Japanese Garden. The bamboo she holds represents strength and flexibility. Sparrows symbolize community, and the iris is purifying and represents loyalty and a noble heart. Minoru Takahashi was the main gardener at the Seattle Japanese Garden from 1968 to his retirement in 1980. Takahashi wears a moss vest and is accompanied by a wren, which symbolizes action, accuracy, and vibrancy. The full moon maple behind him represents peace, serenity, and abundance. This image was inspired by the autumn moon viewing celebration at the garden. This young couple dances to Chubby Checker's 1960 hit Twist in celebration of the newly opened garden. The two koi represent Juki Ida and Richard Yamasaki, and the relationship between Issei, first generation, and Nisei, second generation, and teacher and student. Koi represent good luck, perseverance, prosperity, and courage. My exhibit is scheduled to be on display at the Seattle Japanese Garden this fall, so please check their website for updates or follow my Instagram account at Michelle Kumata. And I want to thank you for your support of this treasure garden, and my thanks to Chia Ide and the garden staff, as well as the staff at the Elisabeth C. Miller Library for this opportunity. Thank you.
I am an artist, urban sketcher, as well as an illustrator, columnist, and cartoonist for the University of Washington's newspaper, The Daily. I've been drawing basically my whole life ever since I was the age of 3, and it's been such an honor working with the Seattle Japanese Garden alongside 4 other incredibly talented artists to celebrate the 60th anniversary. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to visit the garden early in the morning before it opens to the public, to be able to sketch on location, which is something that is a part of my sort of artistic philosophy. I really love putting myself in a place for a couple hours and being able to just focus on my surroundings and just absorb it and take it all in. For this commission, I decided to use one of my favorite kind of sketchbooks. It's a Japanese album-style sketchbook, and what makes this really interesting is that all the pages are connected, much like a Japanese storytelling scroll. And while it's not very clear on the online exhibition images, what's great when you display it completely, what I'm hoping this will be in person, is that when it's displayed on a wall, you'll be able to see how all the sketches sort of really flow from one to the next. And it's organized such that the first sketch is of the main gate, and it sort of walks you through various moments throughout the whole garden. And the mornings there, all by myself, with one of the other artists, and a few of the gardeners, just that complete silence, hearing the birds, hearing the river. It was just completely tranquil and beautiful and wonderful, and very calming. And being able to sketch in such a beautiful environment is just a beautiful experience. Again, thank you so much to the organizers of the Seattle Japanese Garden, especially Chi and Rebecca, who supported my work and made this whole thing possible. Thank you to everyone whose names I'm not mentioning. It's been an absolute pleasure being able to make this exhibit possible amidst coronavirus and stay-at-home orders, and really finding a way to make this possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Markel Uriu and I'm a visual artist here in Seattle. So for the past few years, I've been making work exploring the idea of invasive species, both literally and metaphorically. The story of how some of these species have moved throughout the world and how we respond to them often reveals something about ourselves, whether it's our desires or our fears of things that are foreign. I use the individual and collective narratives of different species to illustrate different ways in which our values and culture are completely entangled in the landscape and ecosystem. So for this show, I really wanted to create pieces that drew a timeline from the past into the future. I was thinking a lot about memory and the invisible layers or moments that build up in a space. I thought it would be nice in the context of the Japanese garden to emphasize time, as it's a facet that seems to be built into the garden's principles. While putting these pieces together, I spent a lot of time on the blog, poring through old pictures and historical entries. I totally recommend the blog. It's got a lot of information. It's very interesting. So while on the blog, I found a photo of Juki Aida, who was the planner of the garden, the landscape designer who planned the garden. And in this photo, he's standing in the garden while it's being constructed. I then went on a virtual tour of the garden using Google Maps and found the same spot from which the original photo was taken. I took these two images and wove them together to commemorate and merge these two moments in time. So one's from 4 years ago and the other is from over 60. One is analog and the other one is a screenshot from the internet. Okay, so this next image, this next piece is called Mano no Oware. And while going through the blog, I found a translated essay by Juki Aida on building the garden. And from the essay, I sourced some names of original plants planted there. In the essay, he mentions that Akebono cherry trees were planted in the meadow. In a later blog entry on the cherry trees in the garden, I found that the original trees were eventually all replaced by these new varieties. This weaving depicts a sliced up Akebono blossom woven into the two new varieties called Kwanzan and Shirote. I wanted to obscure the image of the original blossoms here and keep the images of the new varieties sort of more intact to kind of commemorate that disappearance or loss. So this last piece is called Future Bounty, Future Past. So I made this piece after finding one of the most recent blog posts announcing Seattle Japanese Garden's new partnership with the Green Legacy, Hiroshima, who sends seeds of trees that survived the atomic bomb to partnering organizations in order to commemorate the tragedy and also to advocate for peace worldwide. I found images of the species mentioned and wove them together. And in making the piece, I was thinking a lot about the potential of the future, both in the new partnership and also in the future growth and change in the garden over time. So those are my pieces, and I hope you enjoy this show. Thanks.